175, also destined for Los Angeles. 56 passengers on board, 2 pilots and 7 crew members. That flight has crashed. That has been confirmed. However, the location of that crash has not been confirmed by United Airlines or by the FAA. Emergency services, of course, have been set up here in the Boston area for families directly affected by these 2 planes crashing. Our own Casey Kaufman joins us now. She's at the Hyatt here in Boston. And Casey, give us the latest on what's being done for these families.
Well, let me first tell you, Kim, that as part of their emergency plan, Massport has to open a media briefing room, and they have done that. We are now in the Hyatt Hotel, where they are going to be holding another press briefing in about 20 minutes from now. They last held their press briefing at around 11:30 this morning. This press briefing room will be open to any federal or state agency that wishes to talk to us. Now, to put it in framework and to repeat a couple of things that you had just said, the American Airlines Flight 11 that was bound for Los Angeles from Boston left here at Logan Airport this morning, according to Massport officials, at 8:59. And rather at 7:59, there were 92 passengers and a Boston-based crew aboard. It was hijacked. It crashed into the tower at the World Trade Center, as we know, and that happened at around 9 o'clock this morning. Captain John Oganowski of Dracut, we understand, was the pilot of the jetliner. Oganowski was a Lowell native. He was a 1971 graduate of Lowell Tech, and he was also a Vietnam veteran. He apparently flew transport jets in Vietnam. Another flight from Boston from United Airlines, this one with 175 passengers on board, with rather 56 passengers aboard. It was flight number 175. It was bound also for Los Angeles, and as you mentioned, it is a confirmed crash, although officials are not telling us at this moment exactly where it crashed. There was also another American Airlines jet, number 77, from Dulles to Los Angeles with 58 people on board, also hijacked. And initially we understood that that may have been the second plane involved in the crash of the second tower at the World Trade Center. And then there is another United Airlines Flight 93 from Newark to San Francisco with 38 passengers, and apparently that crashed outside of Pittsburgh. As for Logan Airport, it remains closed. Security has been beefed up here at the airport. Construction sites adjacent and nearby have been stopped. And most important, a family assistance area for family of the passengers of both the American Airlines flight and United Flight 175 has been set up at the Hilton Hotel. We understand that family members are already there, along with counselors and trained professionals. And I know that we have been mentioning the telephone numbers on the screen throughout our coverage. That area, of course, is restricted to the press. It's closed to the press. I would assume that when Massport briefs reporters in about 10 or 15 minutes from now, we'll be asking them about what's going on at that location. We respect the family's privacy, and obviously our hearts go out to all the people who may be receiving news, terrible news right now on this very historic and terrible day. So we'll be asking the Massport officials about what's going on in the Family Assistance Center at the other hotel, exactly how many people have gathered there. We asked them before at 11:30 when there was a press briefing to give us details of how many people were aboard the American Airlines flight from Boston, the flight number 11, as well as the United Airlines flight. They talked a little bit more about the American Airlines flight, but at that point at 11:30, they were not even confirming or denying anything about a Boston flight that was United Airlines flight. So this is unfolding, a developing story. We will be having the very latest whenever there's a press briefing, and we'll be bringing it to you live, reporting live. I'm Casey Kaufman. Kim.
Story that will continue to unfold, no doubt, for days and weeks yet to come. Again, as we mentioned there, Casey said there is telephone numbers available for families, and those telephone numbers are running on the bottom of your screen, so you'll want to keep an eye out for those. We also have a number of closings in the area and cancellations. We're running those at the bottom of the screen. We won't run through the list for you. We'll just ask that you keep an eye on the bottom of the screen for that information as well. Some of the other ways that we're being affected here in the Bay State, the the National Park Service is closing down all of the sites in the area. That includes the USS Constitution as well as the Bunker Hill Monument. And of course, non-essential employees, both for the state and for the city, have been sent home, all being asked to get out of the city of Boston and to stay out of the city today. Let's go to Robin Hamilton. She's in Back Bay, where workers there have been a bit nervous, have they not, Robin?
That's exactly right, Kim. Well, two of the most prominent buildings of the city, have been closed, the Hancock and the Prudential Center. Now, behind me, there is a little bit of activity on the streets, but nowhere near the usual amount of bustling activity that there is on any given day. On this day, they have lowered the flag to half staff out of respect to the tragedy that happened this morning. It's on the minds of so many people. Earlier this morning, hundreds of people left voluntarily from the Prudential Center. They later issued a mandatory evacuation. It was the same for the 6 buildings, the 6 John Hancock buildings, where 12,000 employees were evacuated. Now, there's no question that after all of this today, many people are extremely scared and sad, and we had a chance to speak to one person today, and these were his thoughts.
I was almost playing a joke on us, and then we got confirmation on the radio, and we took it extremely seriously because we're hanging off the Prudential, and so we called everybody off of the building because we knew it was a life-threatening situation because the plane had actually driven by us, the second plane this morning that had left Logan, so that scares us a lot.
The plane that left Logan, you saw it?
Well, we had to have because we're off the 50-story building, and they go by us every day, so it had to have gone by us because if it was heading to New York, it flew right behind us.
There have been some other buildings that have been closing around me. Behind me, the Heinz Convention Center, there were several conferences going on. Those have since closed, and other buildings, again, have closed and they've encouraged all their employees to leave and just take the day off. Other people we've talked to, it's almost eerie because we actually spoke with one woman a little earlier today who said one of her co-workers' husband was on that flight leaving from Boston, going to Los Angeles. So she was just devastated as she was leaving, going home. So the mood here is extremely sad and very tense. Back to you, Kim.
All right, Robin, thank you. That's the part of this, I guess, none of us really understands at this point, how many of us will be directly affected, whether it's from here in the Boston area or someone we might know in New York City or in Washington. Well, Governor Jane Swift has been actively involved in the situation today. She held a press conference about an hour and a half ago from Framingham, and she had these comments to make. Let's listen in.
Let me just say, first and foremost, that I join with all Americans in being shocked and saddened with the events that have happened this morning to Massachusetts families and citizens who may have lost their life in these terrorist attacks. I am saddened, and I express my deepest sympathy to those families. We have taken all prudent and necessary steps in Massachusetts to make sure that the families of the Commonwealth are protected and that they're safe. We have not received any specific threats against any Massachusetts citizens or any Massachusetts places or structures, and we continue to feel confident and comfortable that the public and the citizens of Massachusetts are secure. And
the governor did mention this morning is that the 9th District congressional race, the primary there, is, of course, going on today, and that is continuing. She is urging all voters in that district to get out, go to the polls. The polls, she is assuring everyone, are very safe and asking everyone to get out and exercise their right to vote today. Joe Shortsleeve joins us now from the studio. And, Joe, you have more on that American Airlines flight that left Boston this morning.
Yeah, Kim, I wanted to tell you about a conversation I had with a source very familiar with American Airlines Flight 11, which left Boston this morning. The source told me that this flight is Boston-based, and what that means is obviously we've been hearing that John Oganowski, the pilot, is from the North Shore in Drake, but what this means is that all the attendants on that flight, the 9 flight attendants, the pilot and co-pilot, were also from the Boston area. The source told me that They believe that the flight attendants, some of them may have lived down in Cape Cod, but they are all local people, and that's the very sad news that we're learning at this hour. Oganowski, I was told by the source, is a superb pilot. His wife, Peggy, is a flight attendant for American Airlines. They have 3 daughters. They live on the North Shore in Dracut. In addition to that, the source told me that Oganowski would never, ever have deliberately flown the plane into the World Trade Center. Now, we don't know what happened this morning, but as it relates to the training of American Airlines pilots, I was told this morning that what happens in a case like this, what they're trained for in a case like this, is that if there were terrorists on board and that they at some point stood up and stormed the cockpit, what would happen at that point is that a flight attendant would pick up a phone, say something to the pilot would know the code, the pilot would then start a recording system which would eventually record everything that was going on in the cockpit. Now, this source also told me that they just simply believe that Oganowski must have been killed early on because it's the only way to explain what had happened here. The source told me that they would never fly the plane directly into the World Trade Center. They're trained at that point to accept the fact that perhaps their life is over and that the plane would have to be ditched in the ocean. Chilling information from folks local in our neighborhood, very close to Flight 11. We're being told that they are all Boston-based from the Boston area, Kim.
All right, Joe, this is such a difficult thing, and questions here that may never be answered for any of us, especially because tape recordings, like you were mentioned, may very well be destroyed there in the World Trade Center and all the rubble there. We want to give you some last-minute updates here before we go back to the network. Red Cross is asking for blood donations. However, they're asking you to wait until tomorrow for those blood donations. They are not set up today and prepared in the area to collect the blood that's needed. This blood, of course, being shipped down to New York City. And also, again, reminding you, 9th District primary elections are continuing. You're urged to get out to the polls and cast your votes. And finally, Massport is planning another press conference. That press conference will probably be coming up in the next 10 minutes or so. We will have that for you coming up live when it happens. Let's go back to CBS coverage of this tragic day and stay with us right here on WBZ4.
A friend she knew down in security, and he confirmed that, and they told us to stay put, not to leave yet. A few minutes later, we were told it was okay to start going down the stairs, and we all, it was about 45 of us. We waited till everybody got out, and then we started down the stairs, and there was not that much smoke in the stairways, and we all had wet rags and kept it in front of our face. And when we got out into the stairs, people were coming down from the 70th and 80th floors, and later on we saw some injured people. People would yell down, "Stay to your right," and people that had burns and some were cut up or whatever. We went down first, and also some pregnant women shut down. Everybody was very helpful and orderly in the stairs, and then we started seeing firemen after we got down to the, I think, third. Firemen were coming up, walking up, carrying equipment, and at one floor, people were passing out bottles of water from a water machine so we could, pour the water on our heads and keep the rags wet. And the smoke was not that bad, We were able to get down slowly, and I think it was 10 o'clock when I got out of the building, and that's when some debris fell down, and I was across the street, and we ran down into like a subway entrance. At that point, I became covered with the soot and the ash and everything. And then I just walked up north as far as I could, up Broadway. My sister works at Spring Street in the Village, and I went to her office. She wasn't at work, but the people in the office helped me clean up, and then I walked across the Williamsburg Bridge and came to my sister's house in Greenpoint. And I was able to contact my wife and children, let them know I was okay, and friends. It was horrible. It was unbelievable. I cannot fathom that the buildings collapsed.
John Serra.
Yes.
Eyewitness who was on the 47th floor of one of the World Trade Center buildings. Thank you.
Thank you.
For your moving eyewitness account. We go to Los Angeles. Brian Jenkins of the RAND Corporation, one of the world's ranking experts on terrorism. Mr. Jenkins, thank you for being with us. This is unprecedented today. Give us some context for it.
It is unprecedented in terms of the enormity of scale of this attack. It has long been feared by those who analyze terrorism, who look at these things, that we could see a major attack on U.S. soil. And certainly there have been many scenarios that have been tested in the various exercises that have been conducted in cities across the United States. But there is nothing in the exercises that prepares you for the stunning images that we have seen today that will take us years to digest.
Mr. Jenkins, there's never been a similar occasion, but on other occasions there's been a lot of conclusion jumping, and a lot of the conclusion jumping